thanks so much for having me. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners here, the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to them, their elders, past, present and emerging. And I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which I do my work, or the waters where I do my work, which includes most significantly for me the Arakwal people, the Yaga and Turrbal people and the Aurora people. So I'm going to tell you a bit of a story today about my research, which I'm obsessed with this particular aspect of at the moment, which is footage of human-shark interactions taken by drones, which is then shared on Instagram. They asked for a niche topic. And I'm interested in that for exactly the reason Steph said, is that I'm interested in the effect of those videos on us and how we come to relate to the natural world. Like, how do we come to think of ourselves as part of nature, humans as part of nature? And this is this study and this way of thinking is like part of a long tradition of research, trying to understand this question in Western European traditions, because not all cultures think this way. So I'm trying to contribute a small part to that using social media. So let's see how that goes. And a lot of the photos in here are from my fieldwork, and I'm going to start by explaining a little bit about my fieldwork to give it some context. So my project, you can check out my website, movingoceans.com, is about how participation in ocean-based sports and physical activities shapes our relationships to ocean ecology. So that's kind of a specific question because I'm a researcher, and so that's how we roll. But yeah, I'm really interested in how sport, which puts us in nature spaces, and hiking can do that, or mountain biking can do that, for example. So I grew up on the beach, so I always wanted to be a marine biologist, and here I am in the humanities, so I've had to come full circle and find my way back. So that's kind of the context of what I'm doing and why I've come to this topic. But one thing people get a bit confused about in my research is this very small little word, sport, which often gets associated instantly with the idea of high performance, competitive, sports, right? So that's not my shtick. I'm basically interested in people like me who are kind of mediocre at activities and do them for pleasure. So I'm studying everyday recreational participation, and my previous projects were about women surfing. And now I include ocean swimming, and I also include sailing in my work. So I'm trying to understand how those sports shape our relationships to multi-species ocean ecologies. Yeah, so when I say sport, I mean, you might have seen, because we're on the topic of sharks, some years ago, I think it was 2015, Mick Fanning in a world-level surfing final, which was broadcast online across the world, had a shark encounter. He wasn't attacked, but it was a very big shark, and it was a live broadcast. And if you haven't seen that footage, it's really worth looking up. It's absolutely shocking. And watching it in real time, watching this surfer in the middle of the ocean, no one around, doing his job with a giant shark around him, was pretty terrifying. But I'm just interested in me, basically. So this is, I also wanted to explain a bit about how I've collected the data that I'm talking about today, because I'm kind of an anthropologist of oceans. So I have the best job in the world because I get to go swimming and surfing and sailing for my job. That's what I'm paid to do for fun. So here's a bunch of images of me collecting data, genuinely, for my project in different sites around Australia. My project's mainly based here. And what's really important about that is that trying to understand what it feels like to be in the ocean, to be swimming, trying to understand what my participants, because I interview people as well, when they explain things to me, we kind of share an understanding of things. So it gives me deeper insight into what's happening. And it also helps me understand when people are telling me small lies in their interviews, because I can call them out on it. And I also analyse social media data. So I look a lot at social media, but what's different for me is I'm not just looking at in a media analysis, I'm actually trying to understand how people I know represent the sports that we do online. So that's the intersection of all the things that bring me to sharks. But first, a little word as well on theory. So what's really amazing about being in the ocean, and like I said, this can happen for people in forests as well, or on mountains, but I'm an ocean gal. So it immerses us in in an ecology. And in the sports I've chosen, sailing's a little bit different. You're pretty vulnerable, although if you've sailed on open ocean, then you will also know it's incredibly vulnerable out there too. So you're in the water, just you and a swim cap and maybe some togs, or maybe a wetsuit if it's a bit colder, or a surfboard, perhaps a little bit, so you feel a little bit safer, but you're suddenly completely out of control, and you're in a multi-species space in a way that is different to how we are in this room. So in this room, there's all kinds of animals around us, no doubt. There's insects for sure. There might be, let's not talk about what animals might be, don't want to get in trouble, but we can imagine what kind of urban pests, we would call them pests, even though they're just creatures who live in the world, might be in this room with us. Or surrounding us, there's probably loads of dogs in the area, and I don't know what else lives in urban Melbourne. I'm new to Melbourne, pretty new, so are there foxes? Are there rabbits?
Deer.
There's deer. There's deer. Yeah. Lots of birds as well. I've just moved down from Brisbane, where ibises are an enormous part of every outdoor interaction. So yeah. So there's all kinds of animals, but what we do in this room is build walls and things that make us feel like we're separate from that. Well, that ain't happening when you're out in the middle of the water, hundreds of metres offshore, and a killer whale swims up to you. Or you're on a sailing boat and dolphins are swimming on the bow. And then the people I was with are like, if you sing to them, they'll hang around. And I did sing to them, and they did hang around. I've been stung in my fieldwork. I've been stung by jellyfish. I've lost a toenail to debris from a storm. I've had all kinds. I can't imagine what's gone in my mouth, in my nose, in my ears, in the pollution that I've swum in at different times as well. So to go into the ocean is to be immersed in a set of relations. And that's what's really interesting to me, about the power of that in reshaping how we think about ourselves in relation to nature. So we're in encounter. Now, when it comes to these sorts of guys, big sharks, and I'm not talking about wobbegongs, and I'm not talking about leopard sharks, and I'm not even talking about hammerheads. I'm talking about the three main ones that we know for fatalities. So great white sharks, tiger sharks, and bull sharks. They're the three I'm talking about when I say the word shark. So the other little ones, different story. But these sorts of animals remind us that we're vulnerable. Now, for this project, I'm drawing a lot on a theorist who's amazing, and you can look up this thing that I'm talking about. Her name's Val Plumwood, and in the 1980s, some of you might know this story about Val Plumwood and the crocodile. She was remote out in the Kakadu, I think it was, Northern Australia anyway, and she was in some water, and she got death rolled by a crocodile 3 times. And she lived. And she said, it's horrific, right? You can find the story. She wrote it up in the 90s. So if you like Trove, yay Trove, and it just got funded forever. You can find it on there. I think the essay's called On Being Prey or something like that. But she says, in that moment, I realised I'm part of the feast, not a spectator to it. Oh. It's a line. And I'll tell you, that line came to my mind one day when I was doing fieldwork. I'm from Byron Bay, so I was doing some fieldwork there, and I was out in the middle of the bay, a little body in a pair of swimmers with a little cap on for safety, so people can see you or something. And I was just floating there going, if anything happened to me, I would die. Like if a big wave came and held me under, if a shark bit me, my blood, when I go and give blood, I just watch it pump out. Like my blood really wants to get out of my body. It's very worrying. It would just flow into the seawater that's a really similar composition. So I was there and I could just hear Plumwood, part of the feast, not a spectator to it. So I looked into the distance at the shore I was swimming to, and I looked back where I'd come from, and they're about the same distance, and I thought, oh, well, I suppose I'll just keep swimming like Dory. So off I went. So this was a big insight for me, and it really changed my life, this moment, and the combination of the social theory that I work with. So theory is really important in humanities research for helping us understand what these experiences mean in people's lives. So there's lots of benefits to the idea of swimming with sharks, whether we encounter them or not. So whether we see them, I've never seen a big shark. I've never seen one. But I know I've been in the water with them. And that's what most surfers and swimmers will say if you ask them a question. Have you seen a shark? And they'll go, no, but I've been in the water. Because we just know that. We know that in part because sharks live in the water. We know that in part because from the area I'm from, there's been lots of shark deaths. And actually, I wrote down the numbers because I'm a vibe guy, I'm not very details oriented, so between 2020 and 2022 in Australia, there were 12 fatalities, so in those 2 years, and 8 of those were in 2020. And you might have seen that in the media, there was lots of reporting on it. And there were 30 injuries from shark encounters. So we say encounter or bite or attack depending on what best describes the thing. So some things are definitely attacks and some things are just bites that unfortunately hit a femoral artery, because sharks are quite curious creatures, but their curiosity is expressed through their mouth. It's not great. For us, it's not great. So for us, so we can have these positive learning experiences from all the animal encounters we have in the ocean. Sharks evoke a different kind of vulnerability that can be really powerful in challenging our sense of self in the world. This is my argument. But unfortunately, it doesn't always just make us go, well, I'll just keep swimming and I'll accept that to swim, I need to accept I'm part of the feast. Some swimmers, some surfers, in particular surfers, they think differently. They believe that human lives are worth more than animal lives. They fundamentally believe this. So I'm not going to critique that, I'm just going to present that to you. And I've interviewed some of those people, and they believe that we should kill sharks in order to create a sense of safety at the beach. So they want to be able to surf whenever they want to surf, and they want to feel safe. Now, it's an illusion, right, that you're doing that, because there's lots of other sharks that will come and take their place, possibly. But it has lots of unfortunate effects. So for the shark, they can be killed. These animals are sometimes 80 years old, and we take their life because we had a sense of threat. They're called smart drum lines, so the shark can bite them, and then people go out and try and release them in time that they don't die. But the really horrific shark bite mitigation measure, that's what you call it in coastal management, are these things, the nets. And so they result in the death of target species, they're called, which are whites, bulls, and tigers. But they also result in the unbelievably high number of deaths of all sorts of ocean animals, including rays, whales, dolphins, turtles, birds, and many endangered species of shark as well. So they're killing machines. No one surfer I've interviewed has thought the nets are a good idea, even if they believe in cults. No one thinks this is a good idea. They think this is a horror show. So why governments still have them is a whole other story. So human-shark encounters don't seem to be such a good thing for the sharks. They can be a good thing for us unless it ends up in injury. The idea of it can change our mind. But the main way that we learn about human-shark interactions is when there's a fatality, through media representations of sharks as monsters. And you know all the images, right? And so when I'm swimming, sometimes I can't even open my eyes when I breathe on the ocean side, because I can imagine something emerging from the blue void. So I can't even look there, because we've seen those point of view images so many times. So this is the main way we've learned about these kinds of encounters, attacks, that they're a threat to our life. It's not an irrational fear at all, because it could happen, but it's a very small chance. So I just wanted to put this word here, which is ocean literacy, and the United Nations use this a lot. It's the UN Ocean of the Decade at the moment, by the way. So ocean literacy is the idea that it's an understanding of the ocean's influence on you and your influence on the ocean. So it's pretty relational, except that most of the ways we think about our ways of knowing the ocean, of being literate with the ocean, are based in science that's from a Western tradition. There's lots of different ways of being literate about the ocean that come from multiple different cultures. And that can be about that sharks are associated with ancestors, cultural ancestors or family ancestors. It might be that they're to do with totems. And it might be that they're such a threat that you just don't swim. That's part of what you give up to take care of that animal, that you don't have the right to just kill it because it's a threat to you. So there's lots of other cultural relationships to sharks as well. And I just wanted to recognise that when I talk about the ways that we learn about creatures, it's just our way of knowing. Okay, so you've seen some of the kinds of images that I'm finding on Instagram, and my algorithm feeds me the goods. So if you want to see this sort of thing, really train your Instagram algorithm. They're pretty confronting images if you haven't seen it before. They're mesmerising, and I still find them to be so, So drones have offered this view from above. They've given us a whole new perspective, because when you're in the water, you can't... Does anyone here ocean swim? Yeah? So you can't really see that much around you. It's very limited. Certainly if something's behind you, you're not seeing nothing. Right? And and even on a surfboard, I think you see even less because of the reflection in the water surface. So these videos are giving us this new perspective, and what's really cool is they're being shared on Instagram, and the cool thing about Instagram is that it's free and it's accessible. You can share it. And you can have captions under the photos, and you can interact with it as well. So it's this really interesting, accessible media that's allowing us to see all these videos from all different countries. Lots from Australia, though. Lots of these sorts of videos. So I've been really interested in the effect of this because they're changing how people think, is my observation. And this is coming up in my interview data, which I will show you. People are referring to these as evidence of non-fatal human-shark encounters. They're pointing to them as evidence that the majority of human-shark encounters end in no injury at all. So they're creating a new kind of literacy about the ocean. They're giving us evidence of what we kind of knew. We know that there's sharks. We know we've had encounters with them, but there wasn't kind of evidence for that. But now drones have provided it. A lot of the commentary on this will often be that the swimmers don't notice the sharks or the surfers don't notice the sharks, and I obsessively watch and rewatch, trying to understand if people have seen them or not. And I think that's not always true. From my experience in the water with the swimmers is sometimes they're just unbothered by it. They just keep going. And that's true from what I've seen in the water, and it's also true from what people tell me about how they've seen other people react. So I'm not sure about the commentary, sometimes the voiceovers that you hear on these, like, oh, they didn't even notice this thing. Oh my God, how stupid. There's a stupid swimmer. I'm like, they just didn't care. Like it was another critter, or they thought it was a dolphin, I guess. So I've put up, you don't need to, if you can't read that, it doesn't matter. It's just my interview data that I thought you might be interested in, and it means I don't have to write it down on a card. And I'll get out of the way of this much more interesting image. So one of the first things I found is how much swimmers talk about the drones providing evidence of all these multi-species encounters they're having. So they're not just evidence of human-shark encounters, they're also evidence of encounters with fish and seals and rays and turtles and dolphins and all sorts of creatures. And the swimmers are really excited about it. And as you can see, often, this is in Bondi, people might recognise themselves. So you can see that in this second quote. The swimmer says, we've got these moments where someone in their swim group gets caught on footage by a drone with like a pod of whales, and everyone's like, oh, wow. And then it's encouragement to, oh, okay, if I want to experience that, then I've got to go out more and be involved. So people understand that to have encounters, for better or terrifying, you have to be in the water. You're not going to have those encounters if you stay on land. You have to make the choice to be vulnerable to what might come. In order to get these other experiences as well, you have to take these kind of risks. You have to swim into the feast, is the way I put it. It's good, isn't it? So these bait balls in Bondi are also really interesting because what happens is when you're on top of them, has anyone been on top of one of these big bait balls on a, yeah. They're terrifying. But the thing is, you know there's animals all around them. So you know it's not just the fish that are there. So this is just a grey nurse. It's not a terrifying shark, but that's okay. But you can see the swimmer doesn't know. And the swimmers really point to these as evidence of, I know I've been in encounter with a shark because I've been on these fish balls. These are big salmon, Australian salmon. They're, when you're on top of them, it's very creepy. Me and eels and slimy fish. So it's evidence. The sharks have always been there, but it's like, oh my God, they're there. And then, well, yeah, they've always been there. So they're providing this new kind of literacy that's really accessible and on Instagram. And then there's this interesting use. There's an idea that we could use drones for safety as a new shark bite mitigation strategy. But no one's having that. No, the surfers in particular are like, yeah, they do that between the flags, but I'm not surfing between the flags, I'm down the beach. And I just read a paper that said, unless the water surface is perfect and there's no wind, you're not seeing a shark. So it's not very effective. Oh my God. And then the final thing is this, to me, which is, what are these people doing? How are they thinking about this? Because when you see it on Instagram, you're not going to see someone bitten, but they don't know that when they're filming it. So how are they making sense of that? I've lined up some interviews to ask them about this, but they do call the surf clubs and things to kind of shut down the beach, but I think there's a really big ethical question about who has a right to film this. So if you ever see a drone hovering over you when you're in the water, I would get out if I was you. So coming back full circle, one of the things that ecofeminists also say, Val Plumwood, Donna Haraway, Anna Singh, so on, they all say that one of the important things we can do to challenge, in particular climate change, the loss of biodiversity, is to make kin with the world that we live in, to not see them as the hostile outside, but to see them as family. And we don't always like our family. We're scared of our family sometimes, but we need to understand their right to life in the world. And so having these encounters with them and accepting our vulnerability in this world is one way. So my argument is that around taking yourself into these spaces, in my case through sport, is a really powerful way of changing the world. Thank you.
That was amazing, foremostly. Down with the Kardashians, up with the sharks, I say. One thing that you mentioned that really resonated with me, perhaps for the wrong reasons in my brain, but when you were saying that sharks are curious and they sort of lead with that curiosity with their mouths, and it can be really dangerous, at first I was like, yeah, same. Because I ask a lot of questions and sometimes it gets me in trouble, and then I was like, oh, that's not what she means. Or maybe don't say that. Anyways, hot take for anyone else who feels the same. But yeah, we'll start to take some questions from the audience. Who's got questions for Dr. Olive? Dr. Shark?
No.
Dr. Encounter? Dr. Prey? Dr. Prey. Yes, you in the back there.
Yes.
Great question. How do we come to terms with actually being the invasive species in environments where we'd like to interact and have those encounters without being the bad guy?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, and it takes us into the area of ethics. Where to start to answer that? We often have a sense that we have a right to all spaces. It's not true, of course, but we have that sense. I think COVID showed us that closed borders really shocked us because we're used to such mobility and access to all beaches, right? Beaches are public in Australia. So it's really challenging to think that we might have to think that through a bit more deeply, but there's lots of ethical reasons not to swim. One of them is that the chance of getting bitten by a shark is higher at certain times. So after rain, when there's lots of stormwater and the water's occluded or full of nutrients, or there's a lot of fish around, way higher chance. If there's a dead whale on a beach near you, way higher chance. Don't go in the water around then. But people want to, and they're willing to accept that risk. But that comes up in lots of other ways too, and some of them are around sometimes like I went to the Disappearing Tarn in Hobart, up on the mountain, and everyone thought I'd want to swim there, but I don't know anything about the cultural history of that or the significance to the Indigenous people there. So I made the ethical decision not to swim because it wasn't the right thing to do. I used to live in New Zealand as well, and there's taboos. If someone's drowned or gone missing in the water, they say you shouldn't be in that water because there could be a dead body, and that might be very unhealthy. So there was a taboo put on swimming and surfing until we were told we couldn't. So your question's really important and very complex because there's lots of reasons that we sometimes shouldn't surf, and in this case, or swim. It might be to protect the sharks from being killed because we feel a right to our leisure. But some surfers do say that. They do say, I have a right to feel safe in the water, and it doesn't compute for me. Yeah, it's a good question.
It's interesting how people are willing to accept the risk until it happens to them, and then all of a sudden it becomes, well, that's actually an unacceptable risk, and it's like a after the fact, yeah. Yes, front row.
I've heard that in like conservation, that animals being cute tends to like benefit the conservation movement. Has the proliferation of like shark memes, like that baby shark song, helped?
Now it's in my head.
Oh my God, yes. Can baby sharks save the sharks? Can we put googly eyes on all the sharks to save them? Yeah, so basically, can we make them cute enough to not want to murder them?
Yeah, so in conservation, there's a bias towards charismatic megafauna, they're called, which I love that term so much. Just like really charismatic pandas, like, yeah, and so animals like insects get ignored because they're not particularly charismatic, or, you know, different species of rat, you know, in different places. So I don't know, people really like sharks, especially people who don't swim in the ocean. People who don't swim in the ocean have no problem with shark existence at all. It's mainly people who use it who are frightened because of that relationality. But I do think, I mean, like Dory had sharks in it. Which film was Bruce in? Shark Tale or something? I don't know.
He was in Finding Nemo and in my Nerd Night talk as well.
Okay, so I think
plug.
all of that changes it a bit as well. But also we come to think of sharks as great white sharks, and they're not. Like you saw my little wobby going through all of that, and they're so cute. But, you know, I've seen the sharks that I have seen in the water, like some of them have been 6 foot. They never frighten me because I don't think I could fit in them. That's my measure. I'm like, 6 foot, it's fine. I'm not going to fit in that. Yeah, so I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I think it's changing.
I'm just imagining a whole bunch of like ocean swimmers being like, come on, bro, take me. You can't even fit me in your mouth. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, it's not very exact.
No, I like it. Also, if I use Twitter, I would definitely make my handle charismatic megafauna. Yeah, that's a sick name. Band name, trademarked. Anyone else? We can take a couple more. Might go with you first. Yes.
Yeah.
Have you done anything about pre and post, would you call it attack in that regard? If people lose a limb or if there's sort of like grievous bodily harm, have you interviewed folks like that? And do they have a newfound respect for the oceans and the fact that they are prey?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a mix of bites and attacks. They're different. I mean, attacks are definitely targeted attacks. So I work at a university, and they're very hesitant to allow us to talk to people dealing with trauma unless we have particular training. So for me, it would be difficult to justify why I'd bring that up with someone. So I haven't talked to, but when I can also find a lot of information about like accounts of their experience as well. Where I'm from, I do know anecdotally and from talking to some people, the trauma's quite community-based. So there's been some quite horrific attacks as well as bites and bleeding out on the beach. And the ripples in the community, this is the difficult bit in a way to understand why people get really violent about sharks, is that, you know, then a parent can't cope and they're turned to alcohol, or there's suicides related, you know, suicide attempts and things. So they're really trauma-inducing events. So, yeah, it would be a really good project to do. But ethically, I would need quite a bit of training to engage in that. So, no, I haven't talked to shark bite victims. No.
University ethics says no. Not until more training anyways. Okay, we can do one more question. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Did you mean to make us scared of the ocean again like Jaws the first time? The 2 or 3, 1, 2 or 3. I guess perhaps if I can paraphrase your question as well, how can we learn to not be afraid of the ocean? Because I'm with you, Sarah, as somebody who grew up in the US, all we get is like the 9 things out of the 10 in the world that will kill you in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Tonight at 9.
Yeah.
How do we overcome that?
Okay, so in ocean studies, people tend to be quite evangelistic about how great oceans are all the time. People who love oceans are like, don't you just love the beach? And don't you love being in the ocean? Isn't it the best? I'm so healthy from being in the ocean. But it's quite smug. And actually, I remind them, the ocean is terrifying. Like it's a terrifying place. I grew up on a beach, on a terrifying beach, and I love it. I can't imagine life without being immersed and putting myself in the way of these things. But it's terrifying. Like I said, there's honestly times when I'm swimming when I can't even open my eyes to look into the blue beyond, or fear and terror consumes me in this like really physical way, and it's all I can do to keep swimming. And then I get out and I'm like, that was great. So I'm definitely not the person to ask, but I think it's there. And people will say, oh, it's a totally irrational fear. Like, why are you scared of sharks? It's so unlikely. But what's ridiculous about that is the more you're in the water, the higher the chance is. And so it is a very rational fear. So I never try and dismiss anyone's fears because they're not irrational fears, but also it's fine in the shore break. It's fine in the shallow bay, yeah. Or go in ocean pools. Ocean pools are very cool. So that might be. But no, I didn't intentionally scare you. It's just like the ocean is fundamentally terrifying.
So what I'm getting is that you're not trained yet in the trauma level to be able to interview trauma survivors. But like, if anyone in the room needs help getting over their ocean trauma or fears, find Dr. Olive after this. Thank you so much. That was awesome.